I'm super excited. I have a guest, TJ, who has launched, actually, you're quite the hustler these days, launching multiple new companies and major life shifts happening for you. So I'm excited to kind of dissect sort of what's been going on in your life. You can help us tell your brand stories.
We get comfortable for this.
Yeah, exactly. So take us back, and why don't we start from the beginning? What makes you you, and what led you to what you're doing, and then what are your ventures that you're working on right now?
Sure. So I'll give a quick 60-second plug, and you can pull out whatever you want to pull, and we can just dive in and dissect whatever you want.
Nope, it's perfect.
But yeah, my name is TJ Haag. In terms of what I do, I'm the host of a podcast called The Not So Fucking Ordinary Show, which I was just super privileged to have Chelsie on, so that was a great conversation. In addition to that, like you said, just an entrepreneur at heart. I like to try and build things. Most recently, started a company called Fit to Give, which I'm not sure if you can see, but creating stainless steel protein shakers. And the reason why I started that is because I've been in fitness my entire life, but I'm also in the corporate setting as well. And so I've always walked around with those plastic protein shakers. You can see the protein inside.
So gross.
It's not necessarily the most aesthetically pleasing thing, especially in the corporate setting.
Yep.
And then as well as they're plastic, so what was once round becomes oval in the dishwasher and things of that nature. So I knew I wanted to create a very high quality product in the fitness space. But then I wanted to take it another level by being able to provide proceeds to charities focused on higher quality water, nutrition, and education. So that was the fuel to this particular fire. And then, as I mentioned, in the corporate world, built my career in sales, specifically in the tech industry.
Yes.
So companies like Oracle, here in Minneapolis, and Infor in St. Paul, and a couple other companies local here, as well as outside of the country. And I'll just pause there because I'll just keep going. So
no, I love
that's
it.
a quick little overview.
Well, we can kind of take one by one at a time.
Okay.
So when you think about your corporate life and your corporate career and sales and training, what strategies and tips kind of crafted you into the entrepreneur that you are today? What things did you learn, or what habits did you have to develop that helped kind of you set your way to want to even start your own ventures?
Yeah, so this is an interesting question because, and I'm hesitant to answer it, but I'm going to give you 100% transparency and truth. I do not like being in the corporate world at all.
Yeah.
Plain and simple, I do not like it. It's not for me, and I don't think there's anything wrong with the corporate path. I don't want to sit here like I'm on a pedestal and I'm shedding bad light on corporate world, because it's a fantastic environment for people to build careers and a life. So I don't want to, be that voice. But for me personally, it's just not for me.
Yeah.
However, it is serving a purpose right now, and it has served a purpose. And so when I wake up in the morning, what motivates me is not, hey, let's go to this in sales in the tech world. What motivates me is, this is a pillar. I recognize it as a pillar that I can leverage to springboard me to where I want to be in terms of full-time in the entrepreneur landscape.
Yes.
And so that's how I look at the corporate world.
Yes.
To continue to answer your question, being in sales has taught me a tremendous amount, from teaching me how to speak to people in power. Selling, the type of sales I'm in is multi-million-dollar technology platforms for organizations. Yeah. And at a very early age, I had to learn and adapt on how to talk to people in power.
Yes.
CEOs, VPs, directors of 10 million, 100 million, $10 billion organizations, and being able to articulate myself and have peer-to-peer conversations. So that's one thing.
Amazing.
Secondly, in sales, contrary to popular belief, you have to actually listen and listen well. Whereas most salespeople are the people that are speaking most in a conversation, it should be the opposite.
Yes.
Ask a question, listen.
Great.
And that is obviously a skill set that I can leverage in other areas, specifically in the podcast setting. Being the host and interviewing you, I ask a question and I listen.
Yes.
And so I think that's a very important skill set that I've been
Yes.
able to take away from sales. And then thirdly, I would say, just to wrap it up, I would say that being in sales, it teaches you to put the customer first.
Yes.
And tying into being able to listen, it's okay, asking a question, listening. So what's important to that individual and being able to meet their needs if you can. So
I love it. And thank you for being honest and vulnerable. I
Yeah.
think, you know, my story is a little unique where I actually super love my job, but I have no desire to stay at a corporate job and clock in, clock out for 25 years. Like, me neither.
yeah,
You know, we feel something within our hearts of what makes us entrepreneurs to be like, you know, why am I working to make someone else's dream
Yeah,
come true
right.
when I have a burning dream inside me
Yeah.
that I need to, you know, let shine? And so, and that not a lot of people are talking about that, and
Yeah.
it's something I feel really passionate about. It's like, we got to share that, we got to talk about that. And for me personally, I'm like trying to take my day job as those are lessons, right? That we get to learn,
Yeah.
and that is our training camp.
Exactly.
So how do I build and strengthen and get the, you know, the necessary training so that when it's my time, I'm there. And I think anyone that's living in that space right now, it's okay and it's
Yeah,
healthy, and it's
exactly.
this weird tension of like, I know I'm destined for more,
Right.
but I don't like to give the advice of just quit, like quit your job and go. It's like, no, we're real people with like we've got mortgages to keep up with, we've got kids, you know, like multiple things, and it's just not realistic to say drop everything and do that. And so if you're in that stage, finding that tension and really crafting and finding things like what you're saying is like, okay, these tools I can implement into who I am.
Right. And I'll add an additional 2 cents to that because I think it's
Please.
important to state this, especially if the people that are watching and listening right now are in a similar state. What I've learned most specifically within the last couple of years is that although it might not be your forever path, you have to commit and you have to give 100%.
Yes.
I think that is I think it's a massive differentiator, and it's going to be a
Yes.
massive determinant of whether or not you're going to propel yourself to get to a state in which you can transfer
Yes.
to whatever you want to do outside of the corporate world. So for many years, especially in the beginning of my career, I had a lot of resentment. There was no excitement to go into work.
Yes.
I liked making money. I mean, that's what drives most people in sales. But it wasn't until I started to look at sales and the skill sets that I was going to pull from that career path that really got me excited about it.
Yeah.
And I mentioned 3 already, but there's additional ones. But once I started to accept that and change my perspective on the situation, rather than going to work and resenting and
Yes.
because I'm a big believer that if you're gonna do something, do it right, regardless of what you're doing, your name's attached to it. And so
Totally.
if you're not a big fan of it, you can't do it and complain about it because you chose to do it. So
Yes.
if you did choose to do it properly and do it to the best of your abilities, no questions asked.
Yes.
So-
I couldn't agree more. I'm like a huge advocate. Go the extra mile and all things in your life, always. You never know. The one person that's sitting there working for you that saw that work ethic ends up being in your life later. It always happens,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, show up every day. And you know, you're lucky to have that job. Like not everyone
Exactly,
does.
yeah.
So, you know, feel gratitude and be thankful and try to be your best and learn from every situation that you
Right.
can. I couldn't agree more. So, what happened in your life to make you start the podcast? Maybe we start there.
Sure.
Tell us a little more about the podcast, what you're working on, what your guests are.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the title of my podcast is called The Not So Fucking Ordinary Show, where I'm bringing in people who I think are extraordinary, and that can mean many things. As long as they are doing what they're doing to the best of their abilities and they're standout people. So I don't care if they're the world champion in cup stacking. I want to know, what's the mindset behind that person that is
Cool.
going to train. So it's not so much about what they're doing, but the level of excellence they hold themselves to. And I want to meet those people. I want them in my network because iron sharpens iron.
Yes.
And I want to understand what makes them tick and see if I can. It's kind of a selfish thing to do. It really is. My podcast is selfish. I want to be around people that I admire and people that are kicking ass.
Yes.
And hopefully they rub off on me a little bit and I can start kicking some more ass. So
I love
it's
it.
a very selfish thing.
Yeah.
But I've been able to create some very strong relationships and improve relationships, like you and myself. So that's the podcast, and I'll pause there.
Yeah.
I'll pause there. Yeah.
I love it. So of course, I'm a branding and marketing guru.
Yeah.
So I gotta ask, what things are going on? What have you learned in launching a podcast for anyone who's interested in launching one?
Yeah.
What is working, and then what areas would you like? Do you have questions about scaling and optimizing and growing your audience?
Yeah. So the first part of that, I would say, what's working really well is speed.
Yeah.
And putting my sales hat on a little bit and reaching out to people.
Yes.
Even if I don't know them, I'm very comfortable reaching out to someone, even if it is on Instagram or whatever it is, whatever medium it is. I reach out to them and I tell them what I'm doing, the purpose behind it, and I invite them. And I've had a I don't know, 99.8% success rate.
Nice.
The only person that didn't say yes right away is just, it's pending. So
Cool.
it's been a fun journey so far. It's only been a few months, but I would say speed to market is super important, even if it's just a podcast where I'm not monetizing, just speed to market, because I could sit back, and you and I are probably similar in the sense that we like to do things very at a high level. Or I would just say we're probably perfectionists.
Yeah.
But I also know that can be a crippling leg. So I'm a big fan of speed. So
Yes.
to put that into context, rather than going out and creating this perfect studio, make sure the audio is perfect, get this $5,000 camera and all this stuff, it's like, I'm gonna grab my phone, get a little tripod, I'm gonna sit in front of it, and I'm gonna talk to someone, have a conversation.
Yes.
And that's what I've been doing.
Yeah.
And it's been working really well. And of course, there are areas that I can improve, which would probably be those exact things over time, but they're not priority for me. So as the podcast scales and as I get more and more viewers and more people on the podcast, of course I'm gonna up the quality of audio and stuff like that, but I'm in no rush. I want to enjoy it, and the moment I turn it into, let's make this perfect, I probably won't enjoy it as much.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think starting is like the biggest thing, right? It's just like, just put yourself out there and start it. We were talking on your podcast about the agile methodology, and it's like test and learn and put stuff out, and you might make 6 episodes that get 30 viewers and that's it, and then all of a sudden one goes viral, and it's like, okay, that one worked. How do I do that one at higher production? Repeat some of those strategies and learnings, and now all of a sudden it's strategic and planned, and I didn't spend $10,000. You know, I rent a studio for that one day, and I know that's going to perform well. And so that is just genius and super smart. And anyone who is feeling called, we were also bonding over our not so love for blogging, and I think what's awesome about social media and this podcast world is like there's multiple ways people consume information. I clean my house, I do the laundry, and I'm constantly listening to a podcast, and I'm listening to motivational books and self-help books, and constantly just audible. So anyone who's out there making podcasts and has something cool to say to the world, especially yours, where it's like, wow, these people are like extraordinary people with big brands, big stories, and they're doing really great things. So if you haven't already listened, I will put that in the link for sure, because you guys definitely need to check that out.
Appreciate that.
Okay, so you're working your butt off in corporate. You're working your butt off in this new venture. You've also launched this brand. So has this been something, you said fitness and mindset are, you know, a big piece of who you are. Did the brand come because of that, or has it been on your heart for a while? Yeah,
the latter. So I've known since I got into fitness, which was probably 5 years ago, I knew that I wanted to do something in the fitness space. I didn't know if I wanted to necessarily make it my career in the sense of being like a personal trainer, although I really like the idea of that and I love helping people in that sense. But for the last 2 years, I knew I got the idea of, you know what, I want a product on Amazon, and I'd love for it to be fitness related. Although at the same time, I had just started an additional company at the complete other end of the spectrum in terms of industry. It was more in the trucking, like semi-truck space. And so at that time, a very close friend of mine wanted to get into entrepreneurship. And so I said, hey, let's partner on this Amazon product idea.
Cool.
There's only one rule. We have to agree on the product because it's important that we're both passionate about it.
Yes.
And so we spent 4 months trying to find the perfect product, and I would continue to pitch a product and I don't want it, I don't want it. And then I came up with the stainless steel shaker bottles about 2.5, 3 years ago, but he wasn't on board. And so we didn't do it. And 2.5 years later, I'm like, you know what? I got to go for it.
I like that idea still.
So I just went for it.
Nice.
But what was nice is, what's nice about that is I know that if I were to execute on that 2 years ago, I wouldn't have had the piece of giving back to the community and those charities.
Yes.
I don't think my heart was in that place. I think, just 2 years ago, I think I was very driven by the dollar, and it was more of a selfish type of endeavor. So I think it was a blessing in disguise that it was put on hold and it's now coming to fruition.
Yes. Isn't it funny how timing works?
It is.
And also, like, sometimes we have to sit on ideas for a while. As entrepreneurs, we are like, okay, I gotta do it, and I have this idea, and let me execute it now. But actually sitting and letting some ideas from our past, like, you know what, that was actually a good idea. Let me bring that idea back to life, and how would I look at that differently? I think it's just like a good tip for anyone. And plus, it is such a great thing whenever I see a brand that's like willing to put themselves out there and then actually follow through and have a good brand message, a meaning. I don't know one consumer, especially in the fitness world, who doesn't relate to bringing the ugly clear bottle like around, and it's plastic and it doesn't wash well. It's so funny. And then I'm like at work and you can see my chunky protein in there. It's just gross. And then to know that it also has like heart behind it, it's just it's a great brand story, and I hope you can just keep getting out there and keep telling it.
Thank you.
Are you doing any influencer work with it and like finding fitness influencers?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's definitely on my radar.
Okay.
The honest answer, especially since a lot of your viewers are in the business world, as of right now, the margins are too thin to try and bring that into the strategy. I have the influencers lined up, and I'm coming up with some creative ways to make sure that the margin is there.
Yeah.
Because let's break it down a little bit. When you leverage an influencer, usually you give them some sort of a code, and they're going to promote that to their following. And so a follower of that influencer is going to be incentivized to leverage that code. Let's say Chelsie Amber 10.
Yep.
And if you insert Chelsie Amber 10, you get 10% off.
Yep.
That's usually how it works. Well, that already cuts into the margins, but not only is the 10% cutting into it, but then I need to give you something for actually marketing that. So then, maybe there's another 10, 20, 30% into the margin. So as of right now, it doesn't make financial sense.
Yeah. Well, I'm having a lot of good luck with some of my smaller brands just doing like super micro influencers. So the people with 2,000 to 10,000 followers who are actively engaged, really ask them about their engagement rates. Myself, I have a super small following, but if I say something like,
it's a loyal fan base. Right?
I get I consistently have a 25 to 45% engagement rate on all my posts, all my stories, which I would much rather have than like an unloyal follower.
Right.
And so some of those rich audiences, it's like, give that for free.
That's
and just say, you know what, I think that you're gonna love this brand story. I'm sending you this. If you don't mind just mentioning it on your story.
I think that's
low commitment, low anything, you're only out the bottle. And now they know your brand story, and they're and anything. These are sexy bottles, so they're going to the gym with it, it's like perfect.
Right.
Even if it's just some of that, and just dabble. Like, okay, if I did 10 a month, is that worth it for me or whatever? Or try it just once and see how it goes. So
and we've definitely been utilizing that path. But to get to the next tier of
I know.
influencer, the 100,000 plus,
I know.
but trust me, we will absolutely utilize that. But again, those two things really dive into the margins, plus the fact that we're giving back, that is a big part of the margin.
Definitely.
And so for me, the way I look at it is I want to be able to give as much of the proceeds to charities, but at the same time, we need to remain in business.
Oh yeah, you need to make more product and
exactly.
keep it going. Yeah, of course.
So it's a numbers thing, and
Yeah.
we're playing around. You
Cool.
know, as we order more and more, you know, economy of scale kicks in, and so we get better price per unit.
Yes.
Yeah,
and I never meant to ask that question, like you need to be doing that. I actually think as a consumer watching people, it's like there's nothing worse than like an influencer's got all these plugs
Right.
and all these links and discount codes.
Yeah,
It's like, no. But when I find brands like yours where it's like there's a lot of people who are in the fitness community who would identify and really like, one, the look and feel of your product is very high quality, and then you have a good brand story. So a lot of people just identify and say like, this is something that I care about. So that's the only reason I meant to even bring it
it's
up.
great.
So cool. Again, how do people purchase these?
Yeah, so you can find, the easiest way is our website, fittogive.org. So not .com, but .org.
Yeah.
FITTOGIVE.org, fittogive.org.
Perfect.
Super simple, yep.
Perfect.
So we got, you know, as of right now, 4 different colors, the rose gold, we got, you know, the white one sitting over here, and then a black and a silver one as well. So
Cool.
Yeah.
And they all look so great. Okay, and then social media question. So
Sure.
you have quite a few followers, and I'm just curious how you've grown that, how you've grown your channel, what type of audience do you have, and has your message on social media remained the same, or has it kind of evolved over time?
It's funny because what I would tell most people, and it would probably align with a lot of what you would tell people, is not what I do at all on my social media. And what I mean by that is I don't really have a consistent personal brand. Like, I'm kind of all over the place. I'm the guy who does podcasts. I'm the guy that has the shakers. I'm the guy who's in fitness. I'm kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
So it's not a consistent story, but I don't know. It's been working pretty decently. I think the number one thing that has helped me. So my following as of right now is a very recent surge in following, and I think it is a direct correlation of the amount of content I've been putting out.
Yes.
And not just on Instagram, but across all platforms.
Yes.
I think that's played a major role. So, you know, YouTube, Snapchat, TikTok.
Oh, you're
Twitter.
TikToking.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's recent.
Okay.
That's recent.
We'll get to that in a
wow,
second.
that's like a whole new ball game. You know how Instagram recently changed their algorithm?
Yes.
I have no idea how TikTok works in terms of being able to effectively post at peak times for maximum engagement.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre. I'll put one video up at a certain time, and I don't even know if it's time-based, but I can put one video up and get 3 views, and I can put the same video up on a different day and get 500 views, and I'll have absolutely no idea why.
Really? And there's
I
no
have
analytics
idea.
or anything
I
yet?
have no clue.
Interesting.
So yeah, you'll have to dive into it. But one thing I can say with certainty is that is a platform that is going to absolutely bubble up.
Yeah.
I mean, the people that are on it right now are winning, and they're winning big.
Yeah.
And it's because they're on early, and people are going to continue to migrate over to that platform.
Yeah, and there's just like a really original content happening in that space. You know, I don't know what happened to Instagram, but all of a sudden it's just like I'm kind of seeing the same posts, the same pictures, the same quotes, the same. And so TikTok is like.
Do you know why that is?
Like,
I'll tell you why that is.
Yeah.
So, you know, Instagram recently changed their algorithm, and that means a couple of things, and there's reasonings behind it. First thing is there's a big social concern around the mental piece of getting likes and having followers. And so that is actually making its way up to people that can make decisions on how Instagram is actually hitting the consumer. And so with that said, there had been talks of Instagram taking away likes.
Yeah.
They thought, some people thought that was true, some people thought that was just gossip. Well, it turns out yesterday, Instagram actually is doing that on the West Coast. They're taking away likes for people on the West Coast. So that's one piece of it. But in terms of the algorithm, what's happening is they are essentially tracking your activity and only regurgitating what you like. So if you like the same 5 to 10 people every day, you're only going to see those posts.
Yep.
And that's what's happening.
It's so true. And then like the most recent people that you followed, and then if you like food pictures, they're going to give you more of that, which is cool, right? It's like, I do want to know that I'm getting content that I like, and I'm kind of sick of the fluff. And then at least when I'm getting brands from a brand and marketing point of view, it's like they're ones that I actually care about. I'm not just randomly seeing ones that have nothing to do with me. So I understand the algorithm in a point, but I think what it turns into then is like all of a sudden we're comparing ourselves to other people and trying to create content like them instead of like what you just said. I'm actually just authentic and I share who I am. And me too, I was really hard on myself at the beginning of the year because I started sharing my personal journey and I opened up a lot more, and I was like, but I'm a brand boss and I'm put together, and I'm like, that's just not real. And I have to share, like, you know what, I'm going through something and that's part of me, and I'm still happy and I'm still good, but this is a part of my brand story. And so as I think about channels like YouTube and channels like TikTok, I think it's awesome that it's a new way for people to just be their authentic self, goofy or small, and I'm excited to see those channels kind of grow.
Yeah, I think if you're an individual trying to grow your social presence or your personal brand, or even if you aren't trying to build your personal brand but you have a product or service you're trying to market, definitely need to be on the social media platforms. And with this change to Instagram, what is the biggest disappointment is that you cannot, it's not as, I won't say easy because it really wasn't ever easy, but it's even more difficult to penetrate into new followers and users because it's just the same 20 people seeing your thing. New people aren't going to see your content. Even if you're using all the hashtags in the world, it's really hard to get new followers now. And so not only are the likes and the video views going down, but your follower count as well.
And they're trying to encourage us to stay on the channel and engage with others to grow, which is a growth hack that I tell people all the time. Like, if you really want to grow your following, you have to engage with others. You have to go to the hashtags.
It's a job.
Find people. But it's like, that's unhealthy. All of a sudden, it's like, I spent 2 hours on Instagram. No. So I'm trying to right now say I'll give myself 20 minutes on the treadmill while listening to a podcast to interact with other people while I'm trying to grow that. And even that is like, okay, that's your limit, Chelsie. You're done.
Well, that's the exact same approach I take. Is I understand it's important to engage and to go outside. I make sure I'm always engaged with my following, but to actually expand your following, you need to engage outside of it. But it is a massive time suck. And that's okay if you're willing to do that. But again, it's just prioritizing your day.
It is. And trying to fit it into times when it makes sense. You know, if you commute via bus, to use it then, or but don't go home to your husband or wife and like sit at home and it takes 2 hours. How can you think strategically about doing it? And then make sure you don't fall into a trap, which is really real, of like following other people's lives and comparing and getting into that cycle, which I fortunately don't have, but I know way too many people struggle with. And entrepreneurs too. It's like, you start to second guess yourself and your business because you're seeing the success of other people with their highlights.
Just run your own race.
Run your own race.
Put your blinders on and run your own race.
I think so. And just make sure that the people who are coming in your path and give you advice, like, take it and sit on it, and then does that make sense and should I implement it or not? Because we're all different. So cool. Well, before we end, I think my biggest question is just, if you were to zoom out and start all over and do everything all over again, what's one thing that you would do differently, and what's one piece of advice for anyone starting that you would give?
I wouldn't change anything.
You wouldn't change anything.
Just kidding. That's the most cliche answer.
I was like, I understand, but I would change a lot of things.
No, I would definitely change a couple of things, but hindsight's always 20/20, of course. But I think I would, if I could go back in time and do some things differently, I would. What would I do? I think I would try and leverage other people more frequently. I think I've always been a very like independent person, try and climb the mountain by myself mentality.
Yeah.
But again, going back to the podcast, and a part of why I started is to be able to network and see how other people are doing things. So I wish I would have done that earlier. I'm a big time introvert. And it's up until recently, it's been very hard for me to reach out and have type of conversations. So if I could go back in time, I would just have more convos with people. What are they about? What makes them tick? What are you doing today? Challenges. Just get to know people.
I think for multiple reasons it's a good strategy for you, because that's kind of your influencer strategy in that, right? You find other people who are successful, who have their own following. Now all of a sudden your brand is in front of them.
That's right.
Which is genius.
Thank you.
Also you're learning from them. So I think that there's a lot of strategy that went into that. And I think it's an appropriate time. Now you're able to have those conversations, you're able to relate. And so it's probably not like you could have started that way without all those learnings. However, I would agree, I am extroverted. I probably did the opposite. I tried to ask everyone their opinion of like what I was trying to do, like they know. And then I would like, oh yeah, he said I shouldn't do that, so I'm not gonna do that. And then I see that on the other side, a lot of my introverted clients are like, I could do it all and I won't delegate anything and I'm gonna prove it to all of them. And I think there's a marriage or like a merge in both of those worlds where it's like you gotta spend the beginning of it owning and feeling confident and really saying, I believe in this and I'm gonna make this happen. When is an appropriate time? There's never like the perfect time, but when should I pull the right people in to like really help me bring it to the next level? Because two's always better than one.
Right.
A crowd's always better than two. So it's just about leveraging them strategically, monetizing.
And that I like the way you put that, and the way I look at it now is not every type of interaction that I have I'm trying to strategize and but there are times where I'm looking for particular relationships that create synergies. Like you said, being able to bring an influencer on my podcast so I can leverage their following and create a synergy where 1 + 1 = 3 type of mentality. I think that's super important, and I wish I would have understood that a little earlier on.
Totally. Great advice. So if you were to leave my audience with one thing that they should do if they're just getting started or if they're feeling stuck, a lot of the viewers who are here are looking for marketing and branding advice. So if you have one thing to just leave behind for them, what would you say?
I'm not going to give a tactical piece of advice. I'm going to give more of a philosophical / mindset piece of advice. And I think if you're fortunate enough to have an idea and you believe in it and you believe in yourself, I think that you need to go at it full force and attack it with speed and conviction, and don't let that momentum die. There's nothing more unfortunate than someone who had an idea 2 years ago and maybe who knows, in a alternative universe, maybe I never would have started something like this. So if you're fortunate enough to have an idea and you believe in it, just attack it, and attack it fast, again with speed and conviction, and just go after it. Learn along the way. Don't feel like you have to have everything figured out, because even if you sit down and try and strategize, no matter what, you're not going to figure it all out. The unexpected is going to happen. So just dive into the deep end and figure it out along the way, and you'll thank yourself regardless of the result. You're going to learn so much. So that's what I would leave your audience with.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
You're incredible. Again, please go support the Fit to Give movement. Listen to his podcast. I'm a big mindset goal person, and your entire podcast just kind of breaks apart the minds of entrepreneurs and the mindset people have and the daily habits that they use. And so please go check that out and hear how TJ is managing and juggling all of these things, and also all of the strategies from his guests. So thank you again.
No, thank
really,
you.
really appreciate it.